Okay, so last week we went through and we had a look at chain witness marks, damage that occurs, things to look out for, especially around the lower part of the chain and the drive links. So the next obvious spot to go to is bars. I'm going to take this used bar that has a fair bit of wear and damage on it. I'm going to go through the process of how to inspect it, how to repair it, how to make it cut again. This is going to be quite common. If you're newish to chainsaws, you've probably got a pretty damaged chain that you need to fix. You also need to pay attention to the bar. Again, like last week, the information I'm going to display on the screen comes from the Oregon Maintenance and Safety Manual. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to download it. You can look at it yourself. There is a lot of very good information in there. So we're going to take this, we're going to make it better. The first and most obvious thing we want to do is just flip it over, look down the rails. Unfortunately, I can't make this show up on camera very well. We want to see if the bar is straight. I'm looking at this from behind the camera, and to me, visually, this is bent. It looks like it's bowing out towards the end here. So what you'll want to do is get yourself some form of straight edge. It could be a metal ruler, it could be an actual straight edge. The first thing I grabbed is this large square. Anything will do. We're going to put it up against the bar. Going to make sure we're not against any of the rivets that are sticking out the nose or any of the damage that this one has. We want flat surfaces. Put it on there and have a look. I'm going to have to try and get you guys some better shots of that, but it is very visibly bent. So that's the side that is bent towards. It's going in a curve that way. I'm going to mark that. So there you go. The first thing you want to check is it straight? If it has hard bends in it, like you come down here and you can see like a 45-degree crease in the bar, it's probably not salvageable. But given this is just a light bow, we can fix that. So the next thing we want to check on any sprocket nose bar is that the sprocket is actually holding the chain away from the nose. So we'll put this in here. I'll try and zoom you in a bit more. So what we're looking for here is for the sprocket to be holding the chain away from the bar rail as it goes around the nose. There is a minimum spec, which I believe is 1/32 of an inch, or about 0.8 of a millimeter of clear space we're meant to have between them. If the chain is making contact with the bar rail around the nose, then it's time to replace the nose sprocket. This one is fine. It is holding it away. Although I'm sure if we all look over here, using the word fine to describe this bar probably isn't the best. The next thing we'll hit on is this. I got a comment with someone mentioning that this could be due to the extra protection tip that some manufacturers put on bars, especially the very homeowner style ones, which this bar was off. It is possible that's the reason it's missing a rivet. However, I believe most of the bars that take that little protection nose are generally the single rivet ones. So I may or may not be right on this. Something that does happen is these rivets become loose over time. We can see in the manual they suggest you check them every 100 hours to go through and just repeen them. I suspect that is what's actually happened here. It has lost a rivet out of the nose. This does happen. I'm not going to replace it either way. But it's something to keep an eye on. We'll go through fixing that as we move on. While we're talking about noses, I might as well touch on everything. If you are using hard nose bars, check the hard facing surface around it. It's very hard yet brittle. You need to check that for cracks. Obviously the chain is in contact with that. You want to check for cracks or chipping around the edge of the nose. If there are small chips in it, it can be possible to re-weld some of the hard facing, but it's not a guaranteed fix. While we're dealing with a laminate bar with that style of nose sprocket, and I'll just grab any of these, that is a solid bar that has a replaceable nose sprocket. The actual sprockets in the end are replaceable in both these styles of bar. These you can drill out the rivets, punch it out, and that whole thing comes out like a cartridge with the bearing and the sprocket. These, obviously, you replace the whole nose when you do it. If you do replace one of these, they will come in a little package wrapped in tissue. Keep it all in the tissue as you slide it in there. If it separates, it becomes an absolute nightmare to try and replace it. So the next thing we're going to look for on our bar is just looking for any of the big burs rolled over to the edge. Obviously we have a very big one here. This is an extremely common place for this to occur, and it's actually partially the reason why replaceable nose tip bars exist. There's pretty much two reasons they exist. If you get pinched, if you pinch a bar anywhere up here and it crushes in on the bearing, on this style of bar it is pretty much a throwaway. You cannot repair it. On a solid style bar with a replaceable nose, you can replace the nose. The other thing that occurs is with low chain tension, the chain gets slapped. It'll wear this section just behind the actual sprocket as it comes back around, as it slaps back up into it. That's generally why on a replaceable nose tip bar, the nose section that you replace extends back a reasonable distance, because this is a high wear area. It makes sense to be able to replace this on any of the more durable style bars. So yeah, this bar has a very big lip there. It has it the whole way down on both sides. It is especially bad down here. If I was to clean this up, this will be blue. Now, blue on a bar can be something to worry about, but a lot of bars will have bluing the entire length of the rail due to the way they are hardened. This is especially common on steel bars. You can get a brand new one. If you knock the paint off, it'll be blue the whole way down the rails. It's part of their rail hardening process. Don't worry about that. What you will worry about is something like this. So if I was to carefully strip the paint off this, what we'd see is there'll be blue in an arc. That means it's got hot. Once it gets to that level of heat, it can take the hardening out of the rail. This can be a real problem. This bar is probably not going to live very long. I'm going to use the chain that come on this bar and just try and wear that out on here. But generally heavy bluing will be a problem. So we've got that on both sides. We have a great big burr, and obviously this bar's never been flipped because the other side of it is pretty good. So we've got lots of places with big burrs and heavy wear. Before we can work out if this thing is salvageable, I need to check bar rail depth. So we'll move on to that next. So bar rail depths, there are minimums. This is a 325 bar. 325 and full size 38 have the same minimum depth requirement of 6 millimeters, or approximately 1/4 of an inch. 404 requires 7 mil, 38 Low Pro needs 5. Put a chart up for you guys. The most common way that people are going to be able to measure this is if they use some form of depth gauge tool. Generally they have a measurement mark on the end, like this one. I'm going to use a ruler just because I can. I find them easier to read. What you want to do is just clear out the bottom of those rails, make sure there's nothing sitting in them. I'm going to take a ruler and stick it into the rail and just move it along. I want to make sure that even in these heavy wear points like here and at the nose, I have at least the minimum depth required. So as I start off down the end here, we've got 8 mil, getting lower, lower. We've got 7, still we're moving up, it's getting higher. Okay, so the whole way along this, only just, but we're going to have the minimum depth here, so we can continue to use this bar. As I go through and repair it and dress the rails, I'm probably going to come down to at least this height the whole way along. It's going to be a big job. But I'm going to do that so we have a nice, even, level bar rail. Okay, so we've got our basics. We've got big divot wears there, very large burrs on the side of it. The rails are uneven, they slope. If you're looking at them on either side, they slope outwards. So we need to dress the rail a lot. We need to clear up these burrs. It is bent, so I need to straighten it out. We're going to have enough wear left at the nose to continue to do this. So that's some of the basics. Other areas you'll want to check. At the back here, the rails are generally spread slightly wider. This is your lead in. You want to make sure they are wide. They should be wider than the rest of the bar groove. That's so it can help stabilize and center that chain as it comes off the drive sprocket. So that's okay. Overall, this bar isn't very good, but I can repair it to do the job that I need to do. So we'll work our way through this. I'm going to start by removing the burs. I'm going to start with that so I'm not cutting myself up as I do everything else. So I'll show you how to do that. Usually this is a pretty simple job. However, due to the amount of damage that's on this, it's going to be a little bit harder. I would normally try and use a grinder to do this, but I just want to show it with the basic tools. So we're using a flat file. Few things that I recommend. Always work away from the nose sprocket. We don't want all this metal working its way into the bearing that's in the nose sprocket. So whether you're removing the burs or you're going to dress the rails, work towards the tail, the end section, the mount of the bar. I need to show this on camera. You're probably better off having this on a flat surface. Take a file. This is a depth gauge file. That'll work fine for it. Put it on the bar and you want to hold it pretty much level. You can have an ever so slight tilt. I'm going to start on this side. We can tilt up a little bit, but we don't want to put a big chamfer on the edge. So all we're going to do is just run down and start trying to clear up this burr. This is sort of difficult because I'm getting both sides. There is a burr on both sides, but not horrifically on one. This side is clearing up much easier. So I have a very big burr up here behind that sprocket. Just trying to roll it over, get it out of the way. Like I said, I'm starting with this just so I'm not cutting myself up when I'm trying to fix everything else. Alright, so it's pretty good down here. In your general day-to-day bar maintenance, you will do this, but you're not going to have to do as much, obviously. You should be catching it before this occurs. What can happen if you leave them on there, they can break off and chip the outer part of the rails. It's a fast way to junk a bar. That is a big lip. Okay, that side is good, feels alright. Just want to go through, you can check it with your nail to see if you can catch on the edge of it. If you can catch anywhere, then you probably need to just keep going a bit. Just trying to level it all off. You don't want that burr breaking off and damaging your bar, and you do not want it getting caught up on the side of the curve as you're cutting through the wood. So that side is good. Do this other side. Obviously the hardest spot for me is here and down here where we've got that big lip. Don't know if you guys can see just how much is actually there. If you're doing this, don't be like me and use your 880 as a backstop. Wow, with that cleaned up, you can see how bad that actually is. Oh, just got to use the chain that come with it. We'll at least get some value for money out of this. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it on camera, but you can see it just gets shiny on those edges as I'm rolling it over. You can hear it grabbing as it gets to this. Like, that is a very, very noticeable lip or burr, whatever you'd like to describe it as. Like I said, in your general maintenance, you should not get to this stage. The whole aim of doing this stuff is you should catch it before it's this bad. It's a lot like chain shafting. You shouldn't have to remove half a cut or two. You should just be giving it a light touch up. When you're clearing your bar rails, it should be a pretty quick and easy job, not an absolute mission like this. Just run along with your fingers, feel it, see if you can catch that lip anywhere. If you can, just do a little bit more. Just one, a little bit up there. Alright, so we've deburred it. So that's one less thing I'm going to try and cut myself up on. The next thing we're going to fix, we're going to take that bend out of it, that bow that it has. Okay, so now we're going to try and take this bend out of the bar. A more professional way of doing this is to put it in a press. I don't have one. Good chance you guys don't either. I've got 2 blocks of timber. Just put them on either end of the bar. We're basically going to pretend we're giving this thing CPR. So to get a bend out of metal, we can't just put it on a flat surface. We need to push it beyond the point of being straight and it will spring back a bit. So all I'm going to do is put my palm on top of the bar and I'm going to try and depress it. Just go gentle at first and we'll just check it. We don't want to rush our way through this and bend it too far the other way. So I have it positioned here with the bow facing up. I'm just going to put my fingers on it, depress it down through there. The reason for using your palm is we're trying to spread that load over a bigger area. We want sort of even load on it. Just take it off. Get your straight edge and check. Alright, so I still have a gap there. We're going to need more than that. Preferably try and keep whatever you're supporting it on as flat as possible. We don't want to impart any twist on this. I'll try and keep my hands out of the way. I'll try and do it like that, so you guys might be able to see. There's a chance I'll have to close up where the wood is just to keep working on this to position it better. Yeah, we've still got more to go there. I'm just moving the spot that I'm actually depressing it a bit. Trying to slowly work our way through this. Getting better. Just flip it around. I want to work it more on this side. They will want to naturally spring back into position eventually. You just got to get it there. Pretty much 90% of the way there. Going to give it a few good ones. It's always the last bit that takes the most effort. I think that's as good as we're going to get. One more for good luck. Alright, I'm going to call that good enough. So the next step of this process is dressing the top of the bar rails. We want to go along here, remove any of the little chips and damage, and we want to make them level. It's an important thing to do. I have some heavy wear points. I'm going to have to remove a lot. There are multiple ways of doing this. With this much damage, I would prefer to grind this, but I'm not going to do it. I want to show you guys some ways to do this with just basic tools. We can use our depth gauge file, or alternatively, and I highly recommend you do this, you can buy these tools. You do not have to buy a name brand one, but I highly recommend buying the name brand files. Valor makes these. Got a little short depth gauge file. They're basically just cut in half. Buy the quality files for them. You do not have to buy the name brand actual tool. Generally, these are available for about 10 to 15 bucks. The name brand ones are a bit more expensive. The advantage they have is they have a flat side here, and you just push this up against the side of the rail, and that way it's easier for you to hold things level. You just go along and work your way down the bar. It is very easy to use. Alternatively, if you need to use a flat file because you don't have or do not want to get one of those tools, that's fine. you need to focus on trying to hold it level. So I'm going to start off using this and I'll move to that just so you guys can see both ways. So if you do find yourself just using a file, remember work away from the nose so we're not depositing all this metal into that nose bearing. We're going to work towards the tail. You're going to grab your file and hold it on about a 45-degree angle to the bar, and we're going to essentially draw file. You don't want to work across it like that. We're going to do that, hold it level and work the length of the rails. This is quite hard to do in a very consistent way. You can probably see that I'm rocking. You really need to focus on trying to get it right. The most difficult part I'm going to have is at the nose because I've got this divot here. So what I'll do to give you guys a visual is put myself in a really bad spot. I'm just going to take a permanent marker and try and paint the top of these rails blue. Okay, so you can see that even coating the whole way down. I have filed this a few times, so you probably won't see as much of a dramatic effect. I take my file, run down it. Can you see the pattern that's changing? Here it's only touching on the very outer edge. Here it's much wider. It changes as we go down. Now part of that could be me not holding it level, so we'll just swap over to this tool to give everyone an idea. We just place that on top, hold it up against the flat edge of the rail, and we'll just run down it. As you can see, what have we removed? We removed the blue from over here along the top of this rail. Have barely touched that one at any point the whole way down. That's because the rails are uneven. Now we're at the point you can see we're barely touching this right rail here. Now we're completely level on this left one. Here we've got both rails even, and then it's changing as we go back. We've currently removed all that marker most of the way. There's some points of it over here on the outer edge. Here where we've got the big divot, I can noticeably see that the rail is worn and spread in the middle. This is going to be a constant bad spot of this bar, but I haven't removed any of the paint over there. The rail is lower on that side and heavily worn. And then it goes to being level. So I'm going to keep going on this side and hopefully level this thing out as best as I can. May actually just swap back to the file for a bit. I generally find I can do sort of heavier removal work with just a file and then finish it with that tool. Again, you should never be at this point. The whole aim of bar maintenance and chain maintenance is you should never end up in this spot. I want you guys to be able to identify when things are going wrong, know when to stop, and know how to never end up in this situation. Alright, what I'm going to do is just quickly flick all the steel out of this rail, and then we're going to check that we're still good for depth. I don't want to go so far that we've run out of depth. You see all that metal build up in the bottom here. Get rid of all of that and then we can check our depth again. Alright, so I'm just going to drop my ruler in there and check my depth. I want to make sure that I have at least the minimum. We are very close to the minimum depth there. Okay, I can still remove a little more. The rail back here where there's that heavily worn spot still isn't down to being level, so I'm going to keep going and try and get as close to it being level as possible without exceeding the minimum depth. Okay, I've got this as far as I can go. I do not want to remove any more. There is an ever so slight bit on the outer edge down there that isn't quite right. It's just due to the way the rails have been worn so heavily. But for the most part, from one end to the other, we have nice, flat, even rails, no chips, no divots, nothing stupid going on there. We do have a slight dip, I just cannot recover from it due to how heavily worn it is. Also have a little bit at the nose that isn't very good either. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the other side. Hopefully that'll be a lot easier because there's nowhere near as much wear. Okay, I've flipped this over. I've just painted the permanent marker down there. I think you guys will see something different on this side. We'll just take a few swipes at it, see what happens. Notice that I'm barely touching anything at all on this left rail. I'm touching heavily through the center of this right rail. Here it is flat and then it's back to just being the center. This is actually worn differently to the other side because they've never flipped it. This side's always been the upper. Because they've generally cut with a lower section of the bar, it's worn the top in a different pattern to the bottom. This happens. This is part of the reason why you flip bars. It helps spread that wear evenly. This bar will never be perfect. Just trying to make it the best it can be with what little life it has left. Alright, that's probably as good as this thing is going to get. So, on to the next step. So this next step's going to feel very familiar. We've already been through and knock that burr off, but now that we've leveled the rails, a lot of that material will roll off the side. So after that, you want to come through again with your file and just clean it up. This should be very simple. Same thing on the other side. Nice and easy. That's how it should be when you dress a bar. If you do this regularly, you'll have a nice, easy time of it. You won't have to do much at all. Alright, this thing's pretty much as repaired as it's ever going to get. It's still ugly down here, but I can't do anything about it. It's a bit ugly through here. Again, it was just a little too far gone. We'll do some finishing off things and then we'll conclude this. So next up, we have the fun part of this operation. We get to hit something with a hammer. As I said earlier, these rivets can work loose. You want to check them every so often. Find a flat metal surface, put it down flat, hit them with a hammer. When you hit them, make sure you hit the rivet. If you hit the bar, there is a very high chance you'll pinch the bearing in there. The bar will be junk. We just want to tap them down, make sure it's flat. That's done. Just one final thing on these rivets in the nose. YouTube channel called Game of Logging. He's an extremely knowledgeable guy. Knows a lot about everything chainsaw related. You should be watching his stuff as well. He brings up an interesting point. He goes through and files these rivets. We just don't want anything hanging out the side that's going to get caught up in the curve, especially towards the end of the chain's life. Now we can't make them completely flat because we need a bit of rivet head there to be holding on to things, but we don't need them hanging out as far as they are. This step is optional, completely up to you, but highly recommend it if you're replacing the nose on replaceable nose tip bars. Take a file and just try and clear the top of them off a bit, just so they're not hanging out there as far. Whether it makes it's unlikely to make a really big difference, but every little bit helps. It all adds up. I mean, we're running a very below average bar. I'm putting back on a chain that's in very bad condition as well. I'm going to make it cut. It needs all the help it can get. I'm going to touch quickly on what I was talking about with the bar rails wearing. This is a poor drawing, but you get the idea. We want them to be even on either side. You can close bar rails. There are tools designed for this. I don't recommend the tools because honestly, a lot of them are kind of crap. I've showed this before. I've used feeler gauges that are slightly smaller than the bar groove and stick them in there and hammer them flat. Oregon recommends using a drive link from the chain. That is the way to do it. The problem is closing bar rails only works in some situation. If that's your bar rail, if they are worn by leaning out in the upper, they're out here, they've been bent out in the upper section, then you can close them back up. You can squeeze that back up. Where the problems really occur is if you have a lot of side-to-side wobble in your chain, but the top is closed, they wear sort of a bulbous shape in the bottom here. It'll arc out from that drive link being pulled side to side. It wears this lower. Once you have worn this lower section in here, it is junk. Unless you can find someone who has a tool called a bar shop, which was a very, very good tool for bar repairs. It had power hammers. It could recut grooves and solid bars. It was an excellent tool. If you can find someone who has one of them, you could probably get a bar like this repaired. If it's just a laminate bar, or more than likely you have no access to that, you cannot do anything with a bar that is worn this lower. You can close the top, but it's like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. If you've got a quarter of a chain left and you're just trying to use it up on an old bar, you're desperate to save money, hammer them flat. It's going to work for a very limited amount of time before that problem comes back, because there's no support or stability for the guide bar, for the drive links in this lower section. That is why I am not closing rails in this video, because this bar is more wear down there than up there. The tops are relatively good, the bottom is not. So I'm not going to show you anything with closing rails in this video, because for the most part I've found it to be the wrong fix for most situations, especially ones like what I'm dealing with here. You may have more success with it. Best of luck to you if it's worked for you in the past, but you need the right situation, and the right situation to be able to close them usually comes from a heavy pinch situation. You can also drive them open if they close up on you from being pinched. You just need to find something slightly wider than the groove and hammer it down through it. I have done this with the end of just a regular issued old chainsaw tool in the past. Just drive it into the rail and then close it back up to the desired size. Okay, so now we're in the finishing up stages. We need to get rid of all that swarf, all the metal that's been caught up in there from removing so much of that rail. Use some form of tool, a bar rail cleaning tool, the end of a depth gauge tool, a piece of metal, a ruler, whatever you've got. Get in there and clean all this metal swarf out of there. Leaving it in there is a recipe for disaster. If you have an air compressor, blowing it out with compressed air can be very helpful. We can see how much of this crap is caught up there in the end. Go through and clean it all out. You need to get rid of it, or otherwise you will destroy the bearings in the nose tip. The final thing to talk about really is greasing nose tips. This is a controversial subject. Here's my opinion on it. If someone's drilled a hole there for me to grease it, I grease it. If they have not, then I don't. I have not noticed them to live any longer with or without. I don't know. But someone's gone to the effort of putting a hole there for it. I'm going to shoot some grease into it. So hopefully people have learnt something out of this process. You've seen some of the issues and how to repair them. Obviously not all bars are salvageable. This one is barely salvageable. But I'm going to run it with this very destroyed chain that come on the saw that had this bar and this chain. I'm going to use this to demonstrate some stuff with depth gauges, why these things aren't super necessary. we'll just show some stuff. I'm also going to use this bar and chain and saw that it come on to show you guys how to maintain this stuff. I never want to end up in this situation. We want to avoid it at all costs. Sometimes things go wrong, you hit something with your chain, you lose a lot of cutter life. There's no excuse for ever getting your bar like that. So hopefully after that last video where I explained some of the damage that occurs to the lower sections of chain and in the drive links, and also now showing some of the issues that can happen with a bar and what you need to fix, everyone has a better understanding of some of the things that can go wrong. I'm sick of seeing advice where people are having a chain cut on an angle and people will tell them to check their cutter, check their sharpening angle, which is okay advice, then go, oh, if you use one of these, it'll cut straight. If the lower part of that link is worn unevenly, if the lower part of the tie straps and cutters are worn unevenly, if the top of that bar rail is uneven, if the bars are opened at the incorrect angle, none of it will matter. You can use whatever you like on the top. If all the underside is worn out, nothing will work. Alright, so that's all of that. I'm going to put all this together and I'm going to go and cut some wood. The next video you will see will most likely be this thing trying to live its best life with what's left in it.